Welcome to The Big Read, a program created by the National Endowment for the Arts in partnership with the Institute of Museum and Library Services. I'm Dana Gioia, chairman of the NEA. The largest reading program in American history, The Big Read is designed to unite communities across the nation through great literature. At a time when reading is rapidly declining among all age groups, The Big Read encourages each American to discover the transformative joys of literature. Today, we'll discuss Amy Tan's groundbreaking novel of Asian American immigrant experience and family life, The Joy Luck Club.
The old woman remembered a swan she had bought many years ago in Shanghai for a foolish sum. This bird, boasted the market vendor, was once a duck that stretched its neck in hopes of becoming a goose. And now look, it is too beautiful to eat. Then the woman and the swan sailed across an ocean many thousands of li wide, stretching their necks toward America. On her journey, she cooed to the swan, "In America, I will have a daughter just like me, but over there, nobody will say her worth is measured by the loudness of her husband's belch. Over there, nobody will look down on her, because I will make her speak only perfect American English. And over there, she will always be too full to swallow any sorrow. She will know my meaning, because I will give her this swan, a creature that became more than what was hoped for."
No one quite deals with magical realism and women characters like Amy Tan does. She's brilliant. She's an American original.
One of the interesting things about the book, aside from the culture, is that it was almost completely shepherded and handled by women.
When Amy Tan was looking for a deep well that she could draw from, she looked at the tension between her mother and herself and why it was there, because it's not just about being Chinese, it's about the American experience.
The Joy Luck Club, I think, contributes towards Americans understanding how we really share a lot of basic human qualities between mothers and daughters, between changes in society, and how different generations are struggling to deal with those changes.
Amy Tan was born in 1952 in Oakland, California, to recently immigrated Chinese parents. The daughter of a Baptist minister and a traditionally strict mother, Tan heard stories as a child that would later inform her distinctive lyrical prose style that moves effortlessly from the mundane to the mysterious. In 1989, her collection of interlocking stories was published as the critically acclaimed novel, The Joy Luck Club.
I grew up with the real Joy Luck Club. The name Joy Luck Club was actually the name of the club.
Amy Tan.
My parents used to meet with a group of friends. They were all Chinese. They were all immigrants. They all were hoping they would find the American dream, or they would find a version of the American dream that would get better and better and better.
Joy Luck Club is really about mother-daughter relationships.
Historian John Kuo Wei Chen.
And it's about Chinese American women of a certain time period that came. It's not about the earlier Cantonese who came over, mainly who were men. Then they couldn't bring their wives over, and they couldn't have families. They could not become American citizens. This is really another generation. China was still, in the early 40s, they were still in the midst of the war with Japan, but it was complicated by the fact that China was also in a civil war.
The design of this novel is both richly complex and elegantly simple. The stories that make up the Joy Luck Club form chapters that alternate between China and America. As a starting point for the novel, Amy Tan used the lives of women in her family and China's turbulent history in the 1930s and 40s.
When I began to write these stories, I found it was important for me to get some sense of the history, because it was the history that shaped a lot of what happened to my parents.
Leaving China, you really didn't necessarily know if you're going to be able to gain access to the United States. You had to go to this detention center at Angel Island, which is in San Francisco Harbor, next to Alcatraz.
Unlike Ellis Island on the East Coast, Angel Island was initially designed to keep immigrants out of the United States. Eventually, the laws changed, and the Chinese were no longer banned from entering the country. The immigrants who passed Angel Island's rigorous screening process found comfort and familiarity in the now revitalized Chinatowns of San Francisco and Oakland.
With the 65-68 immigration laws becoming deracialized, you start getting tens of thousands of people coming into Chinatowns. And in many ways, Chinatowns become repopulated. Their role in helping to transition immigrants and becoming a place in which immigrants felt comfortable speaking Chinese, different dialects of Chinese. So Amy's family is really part of that revival of both Oakland's Chinatown and also San Francisco's Chinatown. They, after all, are not Cantonese. They're coming speaking Putonghua, which is Mandarin, national dialect. It's a different dialect than Cantonese.
The title, The Joy Luck Club, describes a small group of friends and relatives who gather to play the popular game of mahjong. Originating in China, 4 players sit around a table and strategically pick tiles, much like the card game Bridge. It is a competitive game requiring skill and chance, but it is primarily a time for friends and family to eat home-cooked food, drink tea, gamble, and collectively escape their worries through sociability, laughter, and storytelling. Amy Tan's relatives were part of the original Joy Luck Club, first in China, then in San Francisco. L.A. Times critic Carolyn C. wrote an early rave review of the Joy Luck Club.
The Joy Luck Club was first started with another set of wives, sad wives in China, and they would get together and play mahjong and just have fun. I mean, just to have fun, just to laugh at fate.
John Chen.
The Joy Luck Club is really the safety net for these women and families, but for these women especially. It was their space to get together and figure out how to survive tough times.
Amy Tan.
I also think of our beliefs in luck as being related to hope, and that some people who are without almost any hope in a situation, I think of immigrants who are here without documents, for example, still cling to luck. One of the American dreams is that you could, through luck and hard work, find yourself great success, and that equaled joy. Joy and luck were something everybody understood.
Author and jazz musician James McBride.
This book was the first major bestseller that kind of opened America's eyes to the extraordinary tapestry and wonderful visionary life that existed behind the eyeballs of our Asian American brothers and sisters.
What's really remarkable and in some ways typical is that the mother carried all these stories with her. Stories about a different place and in many ways a different time.
Amy Tan's creative writing instructor and early mentor, Molly Giles, describes the captivating and unique voices captured in the Joy Luck Club. The book began as a collection of short stories.
So Amy gave me a short story she'd written. It was her first short story. It was distinguished by a very powerful voice of a Chinese mother that just struck me right away as being something fresh that I'd never seen before or read before.
I dreamed about Guilin before I ever saw it. My mother began speaking Chinese. I dreamed of jagged peaks lining a curving river, with magic moss greening the banks. At the top of these peaks were white mists, and if you could float down this river and eat the moss for food, you would be strong enough to climb the peak. And once you reached the top, you would be able to see everything and feel such happiness. it would be enough to never have worries in your life ever again. In China, everybody dreamed about Guilin. And when I arrived, I realized how shabby my dreams were, how poor my thoughts. The peaks looked like giant fried fish heads trying to jump out of a vat of oil, and then the clouds would move just a little, and the hills would suddenly become monstrous elephants marching slowly toward me. Can you see this?
The Joy Luck Club is written in the voices of 8 women, 4 Chinese mothers and their 4 American-born daughters. 16 stories spanning half a century and 2 continents address the tensions of mother-daughter relationships and the challenges and sacrifices of immigration. Molly Giles.
The way that Amy was so original, I think, is the way the stories are intertwined and intermeshed. And that reminded me of those Chinese ivory balls, carved within carves within carves.
Carolyn C.
It's a question of finding out scraps and pieces about a life that has been hidden. And again, that's very much an immigrant pattern.
It's that story of leaving behind some part of you
Amy Tan.
and keeping that a secret for all those years. That is part of the story and was part of the family life. My mother had to leave 3 daughters behind when she finally was able to get a divorce and the communists were about to take over Shanghai. She thought if she could leave, that one day she might be able to come back and get those girls.
In the novel, this astonishing confession comes as June's mother describes her desperate flight to Chongqing during World War II.
I pushed toward Chongqing until my wheel broke. I abandoned my beautiful mahjong table of Hongmo, but then I didn't have enough feeling left in my body to cry. I tied scarves into slings and put a baby on each side of my shoulder. I carried a bag in each hand, one with clothes, the other with food. I carried these things until deep grooves grew in my hands, and I finally dropped one bag after the other when my hands began to bleed and became too slippery to hold on to anything. Along the way, I saw others had done the same, gradually giving up hope. It was like a pathway inlaid with treasures that grew in value along the way, until one could see cages of ducklings now quiet with thirst, and later still, silver urns lying in the road where people had been too tired to carry them for any kind of future hope. By the time I arrived in Chongqing, I had lost everything except for 3 fancy silk dresses which I wore one on top of the other. What do you mean by everything? I gasped at the end. What happened to the babies? She didn't even pause to think. She simply said in a way that made it clear there was no more to the story. Your father is not my first husband. You are not those babies.
在那遥远的故乡，我失落了一个古老的梦，一个忧伤的梦。
My name is June Wang. My sister is Amy Tan. They had a very bad relationship between my mom and my father. At that time, my mom couldn't take us 3 children with her to move to United States, so have to leave us in China.
Biographer Charles Shields.
Her mother expressed a lot of regret about what she had lost. So while on the one hand, America was a great opportunity and they were grateful for what had happened to them, nevertheless, there was the uprooting and there was the ghostliness of the past.
You're listening to The Big Read from the National Endowment for the Arts. Today we're discussing The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan.
风儿南吹又转向北方，江河奔海 心